In here to our audience and to our distinguished panelists. This is the very first edition of the Glowing Hot Topics in Cryptography with the topic of cryptographic agility. So we will start with some opening remarks. And now, please, Dr. Najwa Arash, can you please start?
Hi, everyone, attending physically and virtually. It's good to see lots of familiar faces today. It is our privilege to host our first workshop, the Glowing Hot Topics in Cryptography, GHTC, in a prestigious venue such as Crypto 2022. And I take the opportunity to thank Kermit, Allison, and the steering committee. As you know, GHTC is being organized by the Technology Innovation Institute, which is a large research institute based out of Abu Dhabi. Today, we have 10 research centers, and one of those research centers is the Cryptography Research Center, which I'm currently heading. You see a few of my colleagues in the audience. And additionally, we have 3 papers in Crypto 2022 by Jean-Paul, André, and Javier. And we're also happy that our CEO, Dr. Ray Johnson, could make it to the audience today. So about GHTC, the program committee and myself wanted to gather some of the most prominent and renowned cryptographers and crypto practitioners today, who I would like to thank very much. Thank you all for attending physically and virtually. It's our privilege to have you here. So we will be talking about some of the hottest topics in cryptography, including the NIST post-quantum crypto standardization efforts, which resulted with the first standards in July 2022, with more to come. We will also address crypto agility as we apply Moscas theorem, protect against the threat of harness now, decrypt later, and start migrating our crypto assets to hybrid and post-quantum alternatives. Also, the third panel or the third table will be talking about the lightweight competition, some of the lightweight primitives, and addressing also the importance of crypto agility and the adoption of those lightweight primitives. Once more, and without taking too much time of the first panel, I would like to thank our distinguished panelists, the program committee, Paulo, Leila, Francisco, and Mike, and thanks to the audience, and I hope you will enjoy the day and find it very informative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Najwa. So we will continue now with Dr. Paulo Barreto, Professor Paulo Barreto, who is going to have some opening remarks about this workshop. Please, Paulo.
Thank you, Francisco, and thank you all who are in attendance, physically or virtually. So this is the very first instance of this new series of workshops. I think it's quite timely, like anybody who's following discussions in the social networks is aware that there's a lot of things going on, a lot of parallel discussions about the standardization of post-quantum cryptography. So the whole series will focus on what is causing the same kind of stir along 2 years. So for this year, of course, it's post-quantum. Next year, I don't know what will happen next year, and then the next one, and then the next one. But the idea is the same. Let's bring people to provide their views on these subjects that are being actively discussed everywhere. I'd like to thank the panelists here. That there is one that will be remote, Luca De Fel, so I'll give him a chance to talk to, of course. But let's then start and talk about our panelists for this session. Our session, this one, will be focused on the NIST post-quantum standardization process. So it's present, it's past, and it's future. So I'll give a chance now to our panelists to introduce themselves. I mean, I could provide statistics and trivia about each one of them, but I think it's important to give them the opportunity to talk about themselves. Like, yeah, I have a lot of papers there and there, but I'm just the next guy here, or not. So first one is Dustin Moody. Would you like to talk a bit about yourself?
Thank you. I'm glad to be here at this panel here. So I'm Dustin Moody. I've been at NIST for about 10 years or so. Around 2014 or 15, we started kicking up our post-quantum cryptography project and building our team and so on. And for some reason, they asked me to lead that project, and I didn't even really know what post-quantum was at the time. And here it is several years later, and I now know a bit more about what it is. So my background's in elliptic curves. That's kind of what I studied when I was getting my PhD. And I've been trying to learn as much as possible about lattices and codes and everything else. But happy to see everyone here.
Thank you, Justin. So next online is Peter Schwaber. Peter?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Schwaber. I'm a researcher at the Max Planck Institute for Security and Privacy in Bochum. And well, I think I can say that I was pretty heavily involved in this post-quantum standardization project. So I was involved in 7 of the submissions originally. And now out of the 4 schemes that now were selected for standardization, I'm a co-author of 3. Another one now got advanced to round 4, so I'm still somewhat involved in the future of the project. And yeah, so generally my work is mostly on the, say, crypto engineering side of PQC at the moment.
Thank you, Peter. So now Michele Mosca.
Hello, I'm Michele Mosca. I'm a professor at the University of Waterloo. I also lead our company Evolution Q. I got into cryptography in the early 90s, trying to cryptanalyze public key cryptography at the time, and then learned about quantum algorithms, which of course was going to redefine what it meant to be secure or not. So I worked in quantum algorithmics for many years. I'm pretty excited about where that field is going, both the software and the hardware. So my sort of focus these days is to make sure we sort of safely, robustly migrate to new cryptography that will be safe in the quantum era. Obviously, post-quantum is the bread and butter, is the essential first layer of defense there. And, 2 things, we need to do that not in a panic, so we don't make very rookie mistakes in the deployment, but it also needs to be resilient in case there's, unexpected breaks or problems that emerge. So what are we going to do then? And that's why, of course, we need things like agility and potentially QKD and other mechanisms in some cases. So looking forward to this discussion. Really great to reconnect with so many of you in person.
Thank you, Michele. So now Luca should be online. Luca, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Luca De Feo, researcher at IBM Research in Zurich. I am one of the unlucky authors of Psych. And yeah, my involvement in the post-quantum research has been mostly around isogeny-based cryptography so far.
Okay, so thank you. So let's start slowly. I'll ask the same question to all 4 of you in turn. It's a more subjective question, the first one, just to set the tone. So what is your personal view or opinion about the standardization process itself? So it's like, what kind of opportunities you see in this process, the challenges, the need for this process. So Justin, would like to begin?
Yeah, it's a good first question. I see the standardization process as a very exciting and a very challenging experience that we've been through for the past several years, and that we'll continue to in the next few years. It's very important and critical, the work that we're doing, and we appreciate the help that everyone who's participating is definitely involved in. Lots and lots of challenges. As a mathematician, I had no idea that patents and intellectual property would play a big role in the whole process like it has. There's been just a lot of complex issues that we've had to deal with. We don't have a quantum computer. How do we measure quantum security? How do we measure a lattice scheme compared to a isogeny scheme when they've got different ways of measuring security? So lots of definite challenges, but overall, happy with the way it's gone. There's been some ups and downs, but we've been able to kind of stick to our overall timeline, and that we're still going to be able to get out the first post-quantum standards by about the time when we originally said we would at the start of the project. So lots of opportunities still in the future, lots of challenges. I'm sure we'll encounter many, many more, but overall, I'm happy with the way things are going.
So, yeah, Peter?
Okay, so as you said that this is a very subjective question. Of course, I can say that I'm very happy with the outcome of the standardization process so far. I think it was a quite impressive experience. So I think also for NIST, they've never done anything of that scale before. I mean, there was the AES and the SHA-3 standardization. When AES happened, I did not exist in the academic crypto community. When SHA-3 happened, I was mainly involved by writing rump session songs. So for me, this was really a first to be involved. And well, looking back, I think there was a few surprises in terms of like cryptanalytic results. Most impressively, just very recently, the psych result, of course. There was not, I would say, a lot of big surprises for me in terms of what decisions were being made. I think it was mostly along the lines of what I would expect it, maybe not at the very final decision completely, but there's probably a few procedural things where looking at it sort of from the other side than you, where I would suggest that if you had to do it again, there's details you could change. But overall, yeah, I think it went rather well so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, despite, obviously obvious imperfections and issues that arise here and there, it's going about as well as I would realistically have expected. So overall, I'm very pleased with, we didn't know how this would play out, right? So there's many talented people all around the world working really hard at making these schemes. And I guess as we've learned, there's a few working on breaking them too. I was most worried about, well, I was worried about both, but we definitely had a lot of really talented people developing schemes. The breaking is, as I've pointed out many times before, the hard part, because it's not very well rewarded. It's high risk, high return. So many thanks to the colleagues who spent the time working on breaking the various schemes that have been broken into. Some were just minor breaks, which could be easily patched, others not so minor. So thanks to them. And then a really special thanks to everyone who's been working on trying to break these things, failed, and we don't even know about it, right? And I think that I would like to flag as a serious concern for the field going forward. As we've now learned, there is a non-zero chance of breaking these schemes, and we need to stay diligent and make sure if there are weaknesses, it's discovered by people who will share those weaknesses and give us time to fix them. So I don't have a solution. I know in the 80s and 90s, a lot of the important cryptanalysis was done in industry. So maybe there's a role for industry here, because it's not a great proposition to a master's or PhD student to try something with a less than 10% chance of success. Tenured people maybe can work on it and so on. But I think that's a really important challenge with no easy solution. But maybe there's a role for industry here to do some really intense cryptanalysis.
Thank you, Michele. So, Luca, your turn.
I don't have much to add. I agree with my co-panelist. This was a very necessary process. It has brought post-quantum cryptography in the spotlight and generated a lot of very interesting research, some of which probably wouldn't have happened without it. So it was absolutely a great success, in my opinion. Then we can disagree with the process or the outcomes, but these are healthy discussions that must have been had. But from my personal point of view, I think it was well handled and the outcomes are satisfactory and will be very important for the future. And what Michele just said resonates very much to me. how are we well equipped and to work on cryptanalysis, and have we done enough? That's a question that we should keep asking ourselves. What are the opportunities for academia and for industry to work together on keeping analyzing the schemes in the future?
Thank you. So let's move on to more concrete stuff here. When NIST announced the first batch of algorithms to be standardized, and also the fourth round finalists, there was a footnote. I mean, I hadn't noticed that one until somebody noticed it, and discussion started in the social network. So it's actually quite important. It is about patents. What is the current situation with relation to Kyber versus N-True? Like NIST said that NIST intends to standardize Kyber unless the patent situation is not resolved until the end of this year. And in that case, N-True would be chosen instead. So are there still unsolved patent issues? And what's the point of view of NIST, the point of view of academia, the point of view of industry? So perhaps Dustin would like to begin.
Sure. So it's a good question. I shouldn't say too much because our lawyers don't want me to say much about the patent situation until things are signed and finalized. We already announced when the announcement came out that we reached agreements with Gentiding and with CNRS to resolve some of the patent issues there. And that's what that footnote is dealing with. It says if we don't resolve those, then we could select N-True instead. I don't anticipate that happening. Everything's gone as we expect. It's just finalizing the last few things. It just takes a little bit longer because we're working with lawyers and we're working with an agency of another country. So it's just a little slower, but overall, I'm happy with the outcome. And when we get everything signed and you'll be able to see more, I think most people will be as well.
Any of the other panelists want to comment about this? Like, some other patent is discovered after everything seems to be stabilized, and then what could happen? Like we know one specific patent, and apparently it's going to be solved. But what if somebody else shows up and say, "Hey, I have a patent that covers this specific aspect of one." It doesn't even have to be Kyber. It could be any of the other algorithms. So a patent that is still unknown. People are waiting a chance to make their entrance and say, well, here is a patent that covers this algorithm that has already been standardized. So the standard is already published. Is there any contingency plan to like what to do if this turns out to be the case?
Maybe I'll just say one more about that and welcome comments from anyone else. And that's another good reason to have more than one algorithm standardized from the chem category and from the digital signature category. With signatures, we currently have 3. With chems, we have 1, and we have 4 in the 4th round. So if there is an unknown patent that comes up, I mean, it's hard to predict in advance exactly how it would play out, but by having more than one standardized, you can protect against that. I mean, and that's a threat that could exist as well with any crypto system, not just post-quantum, could occur with lightweight or symmetric, or even crypto that we are using today. There could always come up something, but it's a tough question. We try and plan for that and think about what we can do, but it's hard to completely protect against that possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just point out, I mean, cryptography is not really a nice to have in the modern era. It was already, important in the 90s. It's even more critically important today and going forward. So I think it'd be a really, really unfortunate self-inflicted wound on humanity if we don't figure out a way to deploy the best cryptography we possibly can, right? Because even a 1% loss in not doing that is tremendous when you calculate what's at stake. So I really hope that we take this as seriously as we do as a community, and we really deploy the best crypto we can, and we don't have sort of inappropriate reasons for deploying the second or third best cryptography, because the stakes really are high, and it should be taken seriously and escalated if needed, if things really start getting going off the rails, let's say. But I guess I'm hopeful that things will play out well, and everyone is reasonable and fair.
Let me suggest an extension along these same lines. So there is reason to have more than one algorithm for each category standardized because of this, and probably other reasons too. And how about diversifying the underlying security assumptions? Like we have lattices, we have hash, and we have the fourth round code algorithms, but it's only this: lattices, codes, and hash-based signatures. Would it be interesting, or would there be any reason to standardize something else? It's like until recently we had at least two more finalists based on completely different assumptions. So what is the trade-off here? Like, how interesting would that be? How much of a hindrance this would be in terms of standardized stuff? If we have more variety there, what are the pros and cons about this, having more variety in the underlying security assumptions?
Do you want to start?
Sure.
I think it would be very useful and interesting to have more diversification. We're glad that we do have some diversification going into the process. We expected submissions from various families, but we also didn't know what else would come out there. In the first round, I think you saw some interesting submissions as well that were not lattice or code-based or multivariate. Those didn't tend to survive too much. Psych, the Isogeny one lasted, Picnic, Sphinx Plus. So we did have those. We would certainly like to encourage more research, get more diversity. Post-quantum standardization isn't going to end in a year. It's going to continue on for many, many years. And we do need new research ideas in developing new crypto systems. So we definitely want to encourage that. We also have to balance that with, in order to have confidence in this scheme, it needs to be mature and have been around for a while, had lots of analysis. So if there is a new idea, it'll take a number of years before we could potentially standardize it. So there's kind of a trade-off there. We hopefully will see a little bit of some new ideas in our call for additional signatures. We expect some things, but I'm hopeful that there'll be some new ideas out there as well that can start being explored.
So maybe to add to this, of course, it's good to have some diversity, and we've just seen now with Psych that it is possible that actually schemes get broken, and then it's good to have a fallback from a different realm with really different assumptions. Maybe one additional aspect is from an engineering point of view. When you're looking at the schemes, then schemes based on very different assumptions also show really different performance characteristics, and I don't think we will end up, well, it's a tough prediction, but I don't think we will ever end up with something that is as nice as elliptic curve cryptography is now pre-quantum, where you just send 32 bytes this way, 32 bytes this way. It's all very efficient. You have this one building block, scalar multiplication that you need to implement and protect and everything. And so that means that different applications may want to pick different schemes, not just because of different assumptions, but actually because they have different performance characteristics. One example would be classic McAleese, which has really big public keys, but really small ciphertext. So if you don't care about the big public keys, then, well, this is actually a very interesting tool to have in your belt to build protocols.
Yeah, I think Adi Shamir at the Fort Lauderdale meeting, outlined these three, tiers, right? The production ready algorithms, and then I forget what the middle one was, but somewhere between that and just research exploratory. We do need those three tiers, some balanced portfolio of the three. And I think as a community, we should be respectful of all three tiers. Because I think what often happens is that third tier kind of gets dismissed, gets all their grant proposals rejected and trashed, and their papers get rejected because nobody needs it, and you don't live up to the standards of the stuff that's been around for decades more. I guess that's human nature, but maybe, and of course there has to be, there are standards, even when you're doing more exploratory research, there's good and there's bad research there. But we need a balanced portfolio of those three for all the reasons I think we appreciate. But in practice, since the beginning of RSA, when ECC was, of course, who needs it and we can't trust it, and then eventually ECC became mainstream, and then all the post-quantum schemes were kind of the ugly ducklings, and now, we should just, it's going to continue, but I think we do really need to support and nurture, because there aren't really, what are the, we really is really profound fundamental research to find alternatives, and they need to be kind of nurtured and appreciated in a different way than, of course, the mainstream production grade cryptography is.
Luca, would you like to make some comment?
Hi, as usual, I find myself agreeing with the other panelists on everything. It's certainly very necessary that we diversify our assumptions, and we cannot expect all the assumptions to be at the same level of production readiness. So I guess what would help would also be to have some clarity on how the community, NIST, but not only NIST, of course, intends to keep this process going in the next years, because so far we've been learning about the next round and then the next round, but like, is there going to be a NIST post-quantum process in 10 years from now? Like, what's our timeline? This would be something that as a community we should come to decide in some way.
Thank you. So let me, in the same context, let me describe a situation here. Imagine that we already have the published standard, this is the very first batch of standardized algorithms, possibly the next batch as well. So it's some point in the future, the near future, 1-2 years from now. So we have a selection of post-quantum alternatives to the kind of cryptography we use today. But we are still using like elliptic curves, we are still using RSA. So there are several viewpoints here that could be taken. One is, well, we have a new standard that offers alternatives if or when quantum computers become a threat, but let's keep this as a like a backup plan. Let's keep using elliptic curves and RSA, and that's it. This is one point of view. A completely different one, the opposite point of view is, well, let's migrate away from elliptic curves and RSA now, immediately. Let's not wait for quantum computers to become technical reality, like could be 50 years from now. It's important that we are prepared right now. So let's migrate now. Let's forget about everything that is being used today and move to this new selection of algorithms. And there is like any number of viewpoints in between those. Like, for instance, we could try and adopt hybrid schemes. Let's encrypt everything using elliptic curves and lattices. So if any one of these two is broken, there is still another layer here. There are pros and cons. So the question here is, what is your view about this? Which position along this range would you put yourself in? Like, should we keep the new post-quantum algorithms as a backup, or should we migrate immediately, or something in between, hybrid approach? What are your views about this? Like to start?
I can start. So you probably are aware that the question about hybrids has recently been referred to as opening Pandora's box on the PQC forum. My opinion is that we should do hybrid. We should migrate to the new algorithms as soon as possible, but we should do it always in conjunction with the currently deployed cryptography. With elliptic curve crypto, I think we have really a very, very stable foundation. Cryptanalysis is really well understood. I think everyone here in the room, probably everyone here in the room, would be majorly surprised if the elliptic curve discrete logarithm problem turned out to be insecure with like not taking quantum computers into account. There's also a performance argument to be made here. So if you're looking at, say, combination of Kyber with some elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, Kyber is faster. So if you're using elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman now, if you throw Kyber on top of this, then it's not becoming slower even by a factor of 2. It's actually, maybe a factor 1.5 slower. In terms of sizes, if you migrate into post-quantum crypto anyway, which you have to, and you're transmitting roughly a kilobyte each way, then adding 32 bytes on this on top for elliptic curve is also not going to make a huge difference. And I think it's a no-brainer that you should do hybrid.
But don't you think this would cause problems for a highly heterogeneous network? Like you have powerful servers here, you have very constrained platforms elsewhere. So even a factor of 1.5, like if processing times become 50% longer, if bandwidth occupation becomes 50% larger, this could be a hindrance. So do you think there's a justification, like even so we should try to migrate away or go for a hybrid approach right now, even in this scenario?
Yes.
So what would you say to those people who have to face this? Like it's on your own, or is there a way of overcoming this difficulty?
So I think really the constraint is going to be, in particular in the embedded world, is going to be bandwidth, maybe memory requirements. And if you migrate into post-quantum crypto, which you have to do anyway, then it's not a factor of 1.5, but it's adding 32 bytes on top of a kilobyte. And yes, they can probably come up with some application where these 32 bytes exactly make the difference between fitting into a packet or not fitting into a packet. But really the overhead in terms of bandwidth requirements from doing post-quantum or post-quantum plus ECC, they're so small that, yeah, for me, this is pretty much of a no-brainer. And yeah, I mean, we are in a field where 10% performance improvement gives you a chess paper, but still, this is, for me, this is clear.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Peter. I mean, in the vast majority of circumstances, the return on investment calculation, based on what I know, and I think we know on the outside, is clear. There is an investment. It is a little more complicated, but it's not that complicated. Like we know how to combine two things well, I think, and so on. So there's a bit of cost, but we're mitigating what risk? The risk that there's a classical break of lattices that doesn't break ECC. So until somebody proves a theorem that says if you break lattices, you also break ECC, I think there's certainly value. Now, there are going to be some resource constrained situations where there you have maybe the ROI calculation is different. There's a whole lightweight crypto, challenge and so on, but so have that discussion there. But in the vast majority of cases, I agree with Peter.
Yeah, NIST already in our 856C, we accommodate a way to do a hybrid combined shared secrets and then run it through a KDF. So you can still get FIPS approval on the standardized part. So we have already taken steps to accommodate a way to do a kind of a hybrid way of combining post-quantum or even any other method with a currently classical standardized algorithm. It makes sense to us that hybrid, that hedges against some risks. There are some pros and cons. Our NCCOE project is also right now developing a kind of a short white paper that will explain a lot of those advantages and disadvantages so that people are aware of all the information and that they could make their own decisions if they need to or not. That should come out pretty soon. We've seen a lot of discussion on the PQC forum. We're discussing it internally at NIST, and to most of us, it makes a lot of sense that hybrid is a good way to protect as we move forward through the transition. We don't currently see our role as NIST needs to kind of require it or bake it into the standard. NIST usually standardizes primitives, and then organizations and companies can decide to use those in their protocols. And other standards groups, other bodies can develop hybrid modes, and we encourage that. So right now, that's kind of how we see it at NIST, I would say.
Luca, would you like to comment?
I find myself mostly agreeing. We know that it makes no sense to wait. We need to migrate pretty soon, especially as far as encryption is concerned. We may have a little bit more leeway for signatures. It's fine to wait a little bit that the situation settles, but for encryption, we need to protect against the record now, decrypt later menace. So hybrid is the only solution. Like it's clear that we want to have hybrid. Where I disagree is that it's not NIST's role to standardize a hybrid. Because I have the impression that lots of people think that it's something obvious and trivial. And it's true that conceptually it's not difficult to get a hybrid, but still there's so many subtle ways in which one could.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question about the exponent splitting. So here you compare the attack with exhaustive search, but you talk about RSA. So why do you compare to exhaustive search?
What's happening?
Probably.
Just a sec, Luca, we have a technical issue. A fault injection as it was said here.
Fault injection and the denial of service. So, technical issue that appears to be solved. So, Luca, could you please repeat the last few seconds?
Yeah, where was I? Yeah, I was saying that I think it's not as trivial as some people seem to think, making a hybrid. There are some subtle ways in which you can screw things, and it's important that we have standards also for hybrid encryption. Whether they must be coupled with the precise pair of systems, like we need a standard that has Kyber plus ECC, or we have a standard for making hybrids from generic chems, one or the other, but we do need it. And it's a topic which requires some research from the theoretical perspective, but also from the side channel perspective, in my opinion.
Thank you. So just to make things clear in the same context here, there is the other side of this issue. As we have more algorithms being standardized, like for signatures, we have already 3 possibilities, if my count is correct. And there's new call for short signatures. So from the point of view of industry or somebody who is going to deploy the standard, I'm sorry, this can be a problem. Like, are we going to have to implement everything, to have everything prepared, or more specifically about like round 3 versus round 4 algorithms? Isn't it the case that round 4 algorithms will conflict with the very deployment of round 3, or vice versa? Like if somebody is already implementing round 3 standardized algorithms, will they bother about implementing round 4 as well? Isn't there a chance, or this new call for signatures, isn't there a chance that people will simply say, well, yeah, okay, that's a curiosity, but only this? So let's simply ignore anything else from this point on. We already have the solution to our needs. Is there this risk? It's the opposite of having more diversity. Like it's the other side of this coin. So any comments about this? Dustin, Kelly?
Sure. Or go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's a good question, because, this is sort of a research-oriented, conference and community. But in the people doing real-world deployment, because the best security is the security that's actually deployed and used. They would love to have one algorithm. They wish this was a competition. We picked a winner. We promised that it was never going to be broken, and then they could deploy the hell out of it and optimize it, and that's what they would like. But unfortunately, sometimes life sucks, and you can't have everything you'd like. So we don't have that level of certainty. So now we're trying to navigate the realities of, there is uncertainty, and they don't like uncertainty, and the more uncertainty there is, the harder, less confidence there'll be in deploying, so the less there'll be deployment. So we have to navigate that carefully and try to find a nice sweet spot for them, because they don't want. I think Brian and I were at a conference just for the pandemic where somebody was saying, I don't want 5 options. You give me 5 options, that's gonna be a nightmare for me. I want 1 option and maybe 2. I don't know the answer, but we should, discuss it and engage with people on the front lines of deploying to see where that sweet spot is.
We have a follow-on question about this session. Something that Brian would like to comment. Don't miss the next session too. So, sorry,
Yeah, and Brian raised this point. I may have been in the same workshop there where he mentioned having waves of standardization, and that's definitely a challenge for industry and adoption, because they might want to wait for the next best thing or wait till it's done to implement everything. Yeah, we understand that concern. Like Michele said, that's a challenge that we need to discuss and try and come up with a good solution. We try to signal or make clear in our announcement that we expect kind of Kyber and dilithium to be the 2 main algorithms that people should implement. Hopefully we can get that message out there. You probably want to be ready to not implement just those, because we do need diversity and we do need to have other algorithms out there. But like Michele said, we don't want to have too many out there. With ECC, we had 15 curves, and all 15 aren't deployed. There's only 2 or 3 that end up getting used. So a small number is good for interoperability. So we need to have a few, but not too many, and try and get the message out there. What are the main ones that we do want people to adopt?
Yeah, so for me, I'm an academic who has never worked in industry, so maybe what I'm saying doesn't make any sense. But it's probably a bit of a question of what the cost is to implement an additional scheme. So if you look at crypto libraries written in software, I would believe that when this at some point standardizes more CAMs, for example, after round 4, there will be high quality implementations of those also ending up in like typical crypto libraries. If a company has already rolled out millions of smart cards, for example, with hardware accelerators and everything, they're probably not gonna produce very quickly another generation with the new algorithms additionally on those.
Luca, would you like to add or?
Yeah, just a few words. It's the risk you presented. It's clear, and I have no doubt that people will rush to implement the selective standards, and then we'll have much less motivation to eventually implement what will come out from the next round. It's obvious and it's legitimate because it costs money. Unless it's just a small software development, doing some professional crypto deployment costs lots of efforts, resources to make. So we should expect this to happen, and I suppose it's the responsibility of industry to find the right balance. I don't think this is a situation similar to what we have in ECC, because sure, in ECC you have many curves, but you expect that they are all equally safe. It's just more a matter of choice and maybe details on side channel. And as long as it's just details on the channel, you can choose which one is best for your particular application. But here we're talking about complete families of scheme, of which one may end up being broken, and we may have to replace really fast. So of course, this is the responsibility of industry that's going to do efforts on crypto agility, and it's, I guess, the responsibility of companies who can afford the cost, like make the cost risk analysis and afford the cost to implement additional selected finalists, which will be selected in the next rounds, to have them ready for quick deployment if something really bad happens.
Thank you. Let me ask about this, a new call for signatures. What exactly it will be expected from this new process? Like, is there anything already in mind? Will NIST consider or reconsider schemes based on multivariate quadratic assumptions, or something more arcane like braid groups or whatever? Like, so what is expected from this new call?
So, and hopefully, by the way, our goal is to get it out by the end of August. So it'll be pretty similar to the original call for proposals, just modified for signatures. But again, our main reason for this call is we did select three signature schemes. 2 are based on lattices and Sphinx Plus is not. Sphinx Plus isn't as friendly performance-wise for most applications. So our main goal is to get another digital signature scheme that can be used widely for most applications that's not based on lattices. So that's our primary goal. That said, we will accept any submission. That's what we're looking for. If there's application or if there's signature systems that have particularly short signatures, that's probably of interest to us as well with fast verification. This process, we don't expect it to be as big as what we've been doing the past 6 years. So if a ton of submissions get sent in, we'll probably quickly narrow it down and say, these are the ones that we want to focus on. So yeah, there could be multivariate. I'm expecting there's probably some isogeny signatures, probably some code-based signatures. It wouldn't surprise me that there's some lattice-based signatures submitted, even though that's kind of not our primary target that we're looking for. If they are compelling enough and offer enough of a performance advantage, maybe we could consider it. Possibly some new ideas. If it's a new idea, it would probably still need to take a number of years before we could have confidence in it. But yeah, expecting to see probably a variety of different ideas.
Or Michaela or Luca comment on this? Like, could be from the point of view of academia as well, like, well, more opportunities to do research and publish papers and things like this. Do you feel that let's pick one at random here, like permuted kernels, signatures based on the permuted kernels assumption? Do you think this would be mature for a standardization proposal, or do you think that any proposal to be submitted will be based on like codes and isogenies and possibly lattices as well? So it will be more of the same, or do you expect to see new stuff? It's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. Well, aware of this, but this is the very purpose of this discussion.
So I wouldn't be surprised if there are some more proposals submitted outside of that, like more or less well-known realms. If NIST then decides to admit those, as you said, probably depends on how many there are and how crazy they are. That I can't tell, but I would not be. I mean, in the first, so 2017, when all the schemes came in, I mean, everybody expected lots of multivariate code-based, lattice-based, isogeny hash-based. But then, if you remember this overview table that I think at the time Jacob Alper and Sheriff tweeted like 4 days after the deadline, there was I don't know, 12, 14 categories, something like this. So yeah, I would be, depending on how openly this call is being phrased, I would believe that there's a few more proposals that are just out there.
Any more comments? Okay.
If I may.
Oh, please go ahead.
May I say a word? Yeah. I expect indeed what everyone expects, some more based on multivariate, some more based on isogeny, some more based on code-based. I would also like to point out that these different schemes, these different scenario schemes are not on the same trajectory in terms of maturity. And here is where maybe NIST should be maybe more clear on what the plans for the future are. Because right now, the message that Dustin has just given, and that's coherent with what was said in the past, is that they're not looking for something on the same scale as the 3 rounds that we've been through so far. And there are some systems for which I think that 3 or more rounds may be necessary to gain confidence. So it would be helpful to have some vision of how this post-quantum standardization process is going to go on in the next, on the long term, in the next 5 to 10 years, because that impacts a lot the choices that are made for the system. Some systems are maybe very mature and ready for standardization. Some others may be some promising research level systems, and we need to know how to address like these 3 tiers that Michael mentioned before. We need to do research on all of this, and we need to encourage research on all of this.
Yeah, so on that note, I think if we want to encourage people to do some of this more exploratory cryptographic research, having some sort of NIST process really helps legitimize that activity to their departments, to the funding agencies they're applying to. Otherwise, it looks like, why are you working on? I mean, you will definitely get referees writing you nasty reports saying this is a waste of time because there's already standardized stuff. So if there's an ongoing process, then gives you a little more of a fighting chance to support that kind of work. It should still be high caliber work. It can't be yet another braid scheme that was already broken. But I mean, if it's really novel and there's something to it, then it should be supported in some disciplined way.
Just to respond to Luke a little bit. So as I see it right now, and this could all change, the 4th round will end the process for kind of chems. We'll select things, or we'll be done with chems at the end of that point. And that will kind of end the initial effort that we made. We also started this additional call for signatures that will probably be going on for a few years. Likely more than 1 round. It kind of depends on what is submitted. If there's a scheme that's already very, very mature, it could potentially need a little bit less time. But I think we're anticipating this additional call for signatures going on for a few rounds, a number of years, so that we can make sure that we have confidence in it. Those are the only current plans that we have regarding standardization, with specific plans in place. I anticipate post-quantum standardization is going to continue on for many, many years, and we might come up with new plans. But those are the only kind of existing ones that we've announced plans for at this point.
Can I maybe directly ask you how long you're planning round 4 to run? Like again, like 1.5 years roughly, or?
Yeah, it'd probably be similar to the other rounds. I'd say probably it's closer to 2 years, just because we made the announcement. We're working on the standard, so it will just add a little bit more time to it, but roughly about the same length. Thanks.
Okay, so how about psych? Anyone would?
Who's that
Luca?
question for? Well, you've all seen the noise on ePrint and on social media. Yeah, there is no doubt. Psych is dead. There is no obvious way to solve it. Psych. There may be some expensive ways. There are already some preprints that have appeared on ePrint, which suggest ways to modify the SIDH that should be safe. And my intuition is that they would be safe if I understand well enough this new line of attacks that's been developed. But those are nowhere near the efficiency profile of Psych, so they are probably not mature enough for thinking of using them in practice. So we are, as far as isogeny-based chems go, we are back to square one, maybe not 1, but square 2. where we need to think again about how to make isogenic-based chems efficient. There's lots of different other isogeny assumptions, of course, and different isogeny schemes, which are all at different levels of being usable and interesting. But that's a wider discourse.
I mean, overall, I think we want to encourage more psych-like efforts, right? That's what we want. So this is a success. I mean, this was a very disciplined, very novel. These are top cryptographers doing very novel, creative cryptography. And then some smart people found a really novel way. Like, so it wasn't sloppy stuff. It was very well done. And somebody had to really come up with something creative to break it. That's really good for the field of cryptography, is new cryptanalysis. And we want more of that. So we want someone to follow that template in a sense, and hopefully it isn't broken. So I think overall, this was part of the process. I don't want to call it a game because it makes it sound trivial, but it's part of the necessary process to build a reliable, trustworthy cryptography.
Yeah, maybe
I may be sounding sad, but I'm not, to be honest. This was a great journey. And if my voice sounds a bit depressed, it's just that it's 35 degrees outside and I'm suffering, but no, this was a very important effort, and Psych has given so much to the isogeny community, and lots of what we're doing right now in isogeny-based research stems out from Psych. So it's no one should feel ashamed or sorry for us. And yeah, if you have new ideas, definitely they must be shown to the world.
Yeah, I think it's also an important reminder to the whole community that these things can happen, and they do happen, even with schemes that, I think most people had been gaining some confidence in by now. It's the only scheme that during the competition at some point said we can pick smaller parameters because attacks are actually more costly than we thought they are. And yeah, I think it's good to take that lesson as a community.
And we get asked about that a lot right now, where people are noticing the attack on Psych and they're saying, well, does this throw off the process or does it shake confidence? And like's been said, this is part of the process. Every round there have been schemes that have been attacked or broken, and that's the way it works. We encourage that, and it's the ones that survive that we have confidence in. Sure, it was a little surprising when it kind of right after the announcement, Psych was attacked and broken. But that's just the way the standardization process works. So if that happens, we won't select it, but it doesn't throw off the entire process. It does remind us of that lesson that certainly a scheme can be broken. An idea can come at any time where someone will break something. And that's true of all cryptography again as well. So definitely something to keep in mind. Post-quantum crypto is still a very active research field, and new results will continue to come.
So still in the same context, I'll make a few statements completely or more or less hypothetical, and then I'll ask a question. So first scenario and first statements to consider, like about 25 years ago, anomalous elliptic curves had been proposed for actual deployment because they are particularly efficient. And then an attack was found, like a polynomial time attack against anomalous curves. So the statement here is elliptic curve cryptography is dead because anomalous curves have been broken in polynomial time. Second statement, so MD5, like you don't even need to understand the attack against MD5. You can simply download a ready-to-use library and start creating collisions in like less than half a minute on one standard PC. So MD5 is utterly broken. This means hash functions are broken. We cannot use hash function for functions anymore because MD5 is broken, and SHA-1 is going along the same lines. Probably this will take a few more minutes, but it's not that hard to do the same thing. So hash functions are broken. Why are you why are we wasting time using elliptic curves and hash functions? RSA as well, discuss about safe primes and unsafe primes or multi-prime RSA, things like this. So RSA is dead as well. So in face of these actual scenarios and hypothetical statements, ECC is broken, RSA is broken, hash functions are all broken. So psych was the target of a powerful attack recently. So the statement is isogeny-based cryptography is broken. It's all dead. Why would we want to invest time doing this? Like, why would we want to propose signatures based on isogenies, given that we have these powerful results, these recent results? Is isogeny-based crypto dead? Luca, perhaps
Thanks for playing devil's advocate. No, of course, isogeny-based cryptography is not dead. We are coming to a point where there is certain agreement that, as far as we can see now, these techniques specifically apply to psych and to a few systems that are similar to psych. They shouldn't generalize to all of isogeny-based cryptography. If you generalize too much, at some point you also break ECC, because there are links between ECC and isogeny-based cryptography. So we don't expect everything to be broken. But of course, this is the kind of situation where only time will tell. Yeah, right now we're not in a good spot with isogeny-based cryptography. We're going to go through some time of doubts and loss of confidence. But yeah, we will need more time to gain confidence. Still, the systems that are still alive, that still work, is the majority of isogeny-based cryptography, because in all honesty, very little isogeny-based cryptography was based on psych. Most of the reason for work was done on C-side, on things based on the Dorian correspondence, such as ski sign and new families of signature schemes. So those are still very promising schemes that are worth investigating. So yeah, we should absolutely not stop investigating those. I do feel for those young researchers whose PhD plans have been completely derailed by the new attacks. And I'm sure there are species out there I'm not even aware of that are in this situation. I suppose this is the risk of doing cryptography, and as a community, maybe we should even think of how we can help people who are in this situation. Confident everyone will find a way out. I guess the most effective ones are those who are doing side channel analysis and hardware development for psych, because now we are not anymore in a state where you can think about side channel protections for isogenies, because we're quite far from standardization. But no, definitely there is isogeny-based cryptography is still a very promising field. It still requires research, and we shouldn't stop doing research.
You want to comment, to add? So, do you think like the NSA already knew about these attacks, not only against psych, but against Rainbow, for instance? Like Rainbow was a finalist until the beginning of this year. So do you feel that the NSA knew about this already? Or is this such an unexpected development, especially in the case of this attack, a brilliant attack against psych? Do you think the NSA was unlikely to know this, despite their knowledge of the subject? Please, look, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question. Of course, no one has the answer except those who do. NSA or other agencies. As far as psych is concerned, psych is very much related to elliptic curve cryptography. Any agency that deserves this name has lots of people who have lots of expertise on elliptic curve cryptography and abelian varieties in general. The ideas of the attack do not come out of nowhere. So there is a chance that some people somewhere, NSA maybe, or some other agency, had kind of similar ideas and already knew of the attack. We may know some 20 years in the future, who knows? I guess the most important question is, are we as a community in the public doing enough cryptanalytic research? I would like to point out that this attack, I spoke just 2 days ago with the authors of the attacks, and it did not come out from a purposeful effort for cryptanalyzing SIDH. It came out of a constructive project where they were trying to construct some higher dimensional generalizations of SIDH and trying to get new primitives, because that's the only way you can get funding in cryptography is by publishing, and it's very difficult to publish cryptanalysis. It's much easier to publish construction. So in a way, it was almost an accidental break that came out of trying to do what you can in academia be paid to do. So this is a question that should we be asking ourselves, are we in the public well equipped to do cryptanalysis? And to be honest, it's a difficult question and I don't have the answer.
Okay, so we are almost out of time here, but so just for the record, and as a disclaimer, I'm one of the co-authors of Bike, and I have not taken any bribe from any agency whatsoever. So have you, Peter? So just for the record, Luca, did you take any bribe from the NSA or something?
I'm happy to give you my bank account number if you want to transfer something.
Okay,
no,
so
I wasn't bribed.
would anybody ask any question? The remote audience as well. Okay, so let's thank our panelists for this first session and thank you for attending.